To know Mike Tyson's story is to know the story of greatness and failure. To make it to the top of the world only to be pulled back down by your inner demons. His life is filled with cautionary tales of achieving meteoric success too fast, too young. This is the story of how Iron Mike became the baddest man on the planet. Mike Tyson was fascinated with ancient conquerors. You named a conqueror, he knew their story. Alexander the Great, Pepin, Charlemagne, Clovis, Napoleon, Genghis Khan. He wanted to understand the mindset of the men who ruled the world. Mike's fascination was cemented when his friend Greg said Alexander the Great was like 6'5", but Mike knew better. Alexander stood no taller than 5'5", but the fear and intimidation factor Alexander imposed on everyone was thick and revolting. Mike would say, why would a man, one person, think that they can rule the world? How do you think like that? Someone asked Mike, what did you get out of reading the mindsets of these men? They all asked God for forgiveness. They were all willing to die. That's what all these conquerors were willing to do. And Mike grew up with a darkness inside of him, a darkness that made every punch feel like a hydrogen bomb with murderous intentions. Cus de Amato, the man that loved and adopted him, set everything up for Mike to succeed. He said he will be the youngest heavyweight champion of all time. If he remains focused, he will go down as the greatest of all time. So what happened? Early life. Mike's biological father was Purcell Tyson according to the birth certificate, but the man who Mike knew as his father was a pimp named Jimmy Kirkpatrick. He abandoned Mike's mother Lorna Tyson when Mike was just 2 years old. His mother was a presumptuous woman who often had many men over the house. When the family's financial situation worsened, they moved to Brownsville, New York, a rough and aggressive community infested with crime and drugs. He became deeply involved in robbery and petty crimes. Doing anything he could do to make some money, he would fight people on the streets. He was quickly building a reputation in a rap sheet. As fate would have it, when Mike was 12, he met Muhammad Ali while sitting in a correctional facility. When Mike felt Ali's presence, he knew he wanted to be like him. Up until this point, he had been arrested nearly 38 times. While at the Tyrone Residential Center for Boys, Mike met a former boxer named Bobby Stu, who taught him how to box. Bobby then took Mike to Catskill Boxing Club. There he met Cus de Amato, an Italian who has trained fighters for over 50 years, including world champions Floyd Patterson and Jose Torres. Mike didn't know it yet, but meeting Cus was about to become the best thing to happen in his life. Cus became like a father figure to Mike. He taught him how to control his emotions and direct his anger to boxing. Mike at 13 was a kid in a man's body weighing 190 pounds, nothing but muscle, but needed someone to give him direction and purpose in his life. When Mike's mother died from cancer in 1982, Cus adopted Mike at the age of 16. Mike recalls Cus telling him, when you get hit, that's when you gotta be most calm. He never talked to Mike as if he was a child. Just 3 years later, on November 4th, 1985, Cus died from pneumonia when Mike was just 19. On his tombstone it said, a boy comes to me with a spark of interest. I feed the spark and it becomes a flame. I feed the flame and it becomes a fire. Feed the fire and it becomes a roaring blaze. Mike gets emotional when he talks about Cus. He once told an interviewer, how did he know that I was the one? And the interviewer told him, Mike, you were a specimen. Mike said,
things more than a fighter.
Tyson's Ascension. Tyson brought excitement back to heavyweight boxing. In the early 80s, it was dead. Nobody cared about the sport after Larry Holmes beat Muhammad Ali. Iron Mike didn't wear a robe when he walked into the ring because it made him feel more like a warrior, more like a gladiator. He was the world heavyweight champion from 1987 to 1990, winning his first 19 pro fights by knockout, 12 of them in the first round. He became the youngest boxer ever to win a heavyweight title, the first heavyweight boxer to simultaneously hold the WBA, WBC, and IBF titles, as well as the only heavyweight to do it twice. His knockout to win percentage was 88% for his career. Tyson went from earning under $1,000 a fight to some fights paying him over $30 million. Mike earned nearly $300 million over the course of his career. Part of the reason he reached this level of success was because Cus had formed a team around Mike early on. Jim Jacob and Bill Katzen were the management behind Tyson. They organized and promoted fights. They strategically selected opponents and ethically managed the money. They made sure to keep Tyson out of trouble by keeping him busy in the ring, to the gym, and back. Joe Rogan told Mike, you must have felt so lucky to have met Cus. Mike said, no. Cus said, he summoned me. Problems begin to surface. With Mike Tyson's fame and ego growing and Cus no longer in his corner, issues were about to start taking their toll. Muhammad Ali was in attendance for the January 22, 1988 Larry Holmes fight. He got on the canvas and whispered in Tyson's ear, "Get him for me." Larry had beaten Ali in his final days of boxing. Tyson said that he would restore Ali's honor, and after Mike Tyson's 4th round knockout victory, Tyson went on to marry Robin Givens. Within days, she added her name to all his bank accounts and began to find ways to spend his money. Mike Tyson said to a reporter, now that he's married, he no longer spends his wealth. His wife spends his wealth. Mike started spending more time touring the country than he did training. 2 months later, on March 25, 1988, Jim Jacobs passed away. Tyson had lost the second person he trusted most, who had his best interest at heart and was connected to the deceased cuss. On June 27, 1988, Tyson reached his peak in his fight versus Spinks. When he won that fight, he had all the titles. He was married to Robin. He had everything he ever wanted. But after the fight, Tyson fired Bill Canson, another original team member put in place by Cuss. By now, Tyson completely trusted Don King, a promoter known for shady dealings and other nefarious activities. In October 1998, Tyson said, "King helped me through a great deal of pressure. Nobody can tell me anything bad about Don King." Tyson's downfall. Tyson's life started to unravel quickly. Lawsuits, car accidents, domestic brawls, and financial issues all plagued him. Robin divorced him just 8 months into their marriage. She took his house, $10 million, and even brought Brad Pitt over to the house, the man she was having an affair with. After this, Tyson kept getting into even more trouble. Kevin Rooney, Mike's trainer since 1982, protested against Tyson's actions, and Don King convinced Tyson to fire him. The final strings that Cuss had set up for Mike that were meant to keep him in line were finally severed. It was now the Don King show. In preparation for the February 11, 1990 fight against Buster Douglas in Japan, Mike was knocked down during a sparring session. He also reportedly had 12 Japanese girls in his room and would stay up late. He had no wife, no family, and no real friends. Tyson was 37-0 going into this fight. Douglas, on the other hand, was decently talented but never put it all together. His mother had just passed away, and he decided to train hard and put all that pain into this fight. Tyson was taking massive hits, but in the 8th round knocked Douglas to the canvas, but Douglas caught a break with a count that lasted 2 seconds longer than it should have. Technically, Tyson would have won right then and there, but instead, he got knocked out in the 10th round. Mike Tyson's reign was officially over. Dead cat bounce. After being knocked out, Mike was motivated to reclaim his title, but he ended up meeting Desiree Washington, a beauty pageant contestant. Another contestant quoted Desiree saying he got a lot of money and he's dumb. You saw what Robin Givens got out of him. She later accused him of rape, and Tyson was convicted and sentenced to prison, in which he only served 3 years for good behavior. Broke and desperate to make money, he entered the ring again. A shell of his former self, he somehow managed to knock out several opponents to unify 2 belts again, something not even Muhammad Ali had done. He quickly began feeling invincible again and fell back into hard drugs and women, but only one man remained in his way to become undisputed again, Evander Holyfield. During the fight, Holyfield kept headbutting Tyson, so Tyson snapped and bit off a part of Holyfield's ear. They brushed it off and went back in, then Tyson did it again. After a 2-year ban, he was allowed to return. He won several fights, many by knockout, until he faced Lewis in 2002. At the age of 35, while fighting to regain the title, he was knocked out in the 8th round. The fight wasn't his last, but symbolically it was. Don King mismanaged Mike for all those years and finally succeeded in destroying the greatest fighter the world had ever seen. As it turned out, Don King would be, in Tyson's words, a wretch, slimy, reptilian mother. He sued him for $100 million in an attempt to reclaim the money King stole from him. He managed to get back $14 million, but this was nothing compared to what he could have made if he had reached his full potential. Under Cuss, he was a man hell-bent on becoming the baddest man on the planet, but under the wrong tutelage, he self-destructed. Tyson after boxing. But don't feel too bad for Kid Dynamite. He found a way to recover not only financially, but also spiritually. He is now blessed with a loving wife and several children. He regularly appears on podcasts and has his own podcast, owns a cannabis company, and is worth about $10 million. Let Mike's life be a story of what you can achieve when you are hyper-focused on your dreams, while also serving as a warning to the dark sides of human desires. Consider subscribing for more stories about business, politics, and money. The previews are playing below the thumbnails. Ground Zero. Today, every first world citizen knows what this is, but this looked like this back in 1914. Western Union, the company we know today for facilitating transfers to underbanked people overseas, actually created America's first version of the credit card as a way to defer payments on bills. Then in 1920, the oil companies